3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome back to Show Me Trucks. In this video, I keep working on the two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive conversion back here. I make a cool cross member for the back to mount the shocks and paint the frame and a couple other things. So let's see what's going on. So, I think I already showed this, but frame's painted, letting it dry. I also painted all these parts. And if you haven't seen, this is like that Tractor Supply Magic Flat Black. It's an oil-based enamel. The reason I didn't do another coat is because I was trying to get this cross member ready. Originally, just kind of would have had a post coming out of the frame for your shocks. Well, I wanted another cross member just to stiffen everything up and to mount my shocks, because I don't have those posts anyway. I used it on my 36, but this is a different cross member, I think from a square body. Cleaned it up this morning. I'm gonna weld these tabs in here. They're spaced out just like these tabs would have been on the back of the axle, so spaced out the same. So I think that's 1 5/8, even though the shock I pulled over here is a little less, but I'd rather it be big enough and put some spacers in if I need, than too small, obviously. If you're wondering what Ford Tough looks like, this is off my Super Duty. The shock's all rusted out, but still working, so I'm not hating. But I wanted that to measure to make sure the shock body didn't hit the frame. I didn't have a shock here. I must have tossed them all out. But then this cross member is gonna ride back behind the differential, and the shocks will kind of mount back at an angle, kind of like they do on my Ford. But obviously I don't want to go too far back because it comes down, but I also don't want it to hit the cross member, the pumpkin to hit the cross member. So, you know, kind of what I need to do is throw my cross member in, throw my leaf springs up underneath the frame, measure everything before I get too far. Another side project is, I think I showed you I was working on this core support. Well, this is an old 67 core support. Obviously, I drilled out some holes because I didn't realize whenever you get a newer one, they have an extra little riser, and I thought they stamped it all the same and then just put that riser on. Well, that is not true. Apparently, instead of, that hole didn't even matter. So that's what's crazy. Instead of using the same stamping and just welding those on, I made a new stamping because that hole is way off center. It's like oval. So what I had to do was measure everything, mark it from where it mounts on grill and fender and everything mounts up, measure off that so I can get all my holes correct. And then I hole sawed out a new hole after I welded up this one. And you can kind of tell, I mean, that was like way out on that outside. So I had to weld all that up and then hole saw it. And also, if you're trying to do this, make sure and take your measurements of the little splash guard bolts, and that's like closed in there so you can't get in there. So I use those like riv nuts on there, because they're usually like kind of the cage nuts on here. It was just a lot more work for a $200 core support. Probably should have just bought an aftermarket one. But you know, I didn't know. So the learning experience goes on. I thought I was winning because that the bottom of that's not all rusted out. It's a really nice clean one, but welding all that up sucked. Now, once I weld up the shock mounts, then I can hack these tabs off. I don't need those, and I don't want it to fill up the entire frame, so I'm gonna cut those off. I do need to drill my 4 holes where these are gonna mount, but like I said, I need to get this all in place, make sure nothing's gonna collide, and then I can drill those holes in. But I really need to get it painted, and I wanted to paint it the same time I'm painting everything else, because with this paint, whenever you use it, I don't even bother cleaning the brushes. It is so thick and gross that I just toss the brushes. So I try to paint everything at once before the brush dries up, because if not, it's horrible. Being horrible at filming, I don't know what my deal is, but this is the Crossmember that I was using. Obviously, stripped it all down. And then I put those plates in, welded them, kind of grinded them. That way the shock, obviously I'm not using this shock, but I don't want to say obviously, but bolts in this way, but I recessed it so it has a little bit of play side to side. Obviously showing you that one-handed is not my favorite. So what I've been doing today is push the axle back underneath there. The frame really opens up whenever you let it loose. So I got one side in, and kind of the reason I did that is because you can pry on that side and get it in place, but you can tell that's obviously how much it opened up. But I've already had this holes drilled out because I drilled them all out to the bigger 1/2-inch bolts. I wanted to leave that open. I'm going to slide that cross member in now, get it in this gap, and then bolt all that up. That way I'm not trying to slide and scratch all that paint all the way up there. That's why I need to get my leaf spring in and get that setting right. That way I want it back a little bit, but the farther back it goes, the farther down it comes, so your shock length is shorter. But also, I don't want the pumpkin to hit it on the way up. I would love to not have to notch out my bump stop brackets. I like that. I swear this cross member weighs more than 3 of these other ones, like at least. I mean, it's such a beefy cross member, so happy I'm using it, because it will really stiffen up the back of this frame. Threw this back cross member in, got everything square. This cross member bolts into the side, so it's really tight. It doesn't have a gap like most of your other ones have. You kind of have to keep the back open, get that in place, and then squeeze it all together, because once the back squeeze, you can't move that thing around. It's in there so tight, which is cool. I mean, obviously, you know, I don't want everything flexing too crazy, but I have that pulled up to the top. It does have like a little step underneath here, which I probably can't film right now. Let me see. It does have a little step right there, but the step's not wide enough so it can come up past the frame, which is whatever, because that would let that come up a little higher. But the other issue, and the reason you kind of want to mock a lot of as much stuff up as you can to prevent finding out later. So on these, there's your bed supports. Well, this strip just has bolts in the wood, washers, and nuts. Well, I do want to make sure that I can get in there, and obviously I have a good inch in there, so it's good enough for me. I'll probably have to cut down those carriage bolts a little bit, but it won't be the end of the world to reach in, throw the washers and nuts in from the bottom. I wanted this as close up to the axle as I could. That way I could keep this shock angle not too crazy. My Ford had the shocks like that, so I'm going to do it the same way. Because whenever your axle moves, it's going to travel back also. Not obviously too dramatic, but it is going to travel back a little bit. Obviously, you don't want, whenever your axle's moving, your shock loses efficiency when the angle starts changing crazy. And I am running both my shocks behind the axle, if you're wondering. I know, like square bodies, you run one in front, one in back, just like I did on the 36. It helps with the, axle wrap. Oh, I do want to run a sway bar. I'm gonna run it in the front, and obviously I couldn't do that with, most likely with how the shocks are gonna be. So This is all clamped up. If you can tell, this paint is not cured enough. It is what it is. I'm not really that stressed if I scratch things up. I've already been scratching things up, moving that in, because I'm gonna do a final. Once everything's bolted down in the back, I'll do a final go around and check for any spots where you can see any primer or any scratches or anything like that. But I found some of these bump stops here that work. I was a little afraid I had to get some special ones, but I don't. And then next week, I ordered polyurethane bushings for these so I can blow these leaf springs apart, rebuild those, get new leaf spring pads. Hopefully I can get some shocks that have enough travel. Another thing I wanted to say that you should look out for is, obviously I want to make sure that the pumpkin doesn't hit the crossmember. Well, I measured the space from the axle up to my bump stop bracket. The actual metal part of the bracket is 8 1/4, and it's 8 3/4 up to the crossmember. So it would have to smash through there just to make it to there. So, you know, a couple steps before it blows my wood bed floor out the top. So I got that all drilled out. Now I can pull it out, sand it down, scuff it up, and paint it like I did the rest. Another thing I worked on before the end of the day, because I'm about to wrap this video up for the week, threw my course board on up here just to get it roughly in. I know you're getting blinded by that side, but it's kind of just on mainly to get it out of the way, but also I could throw this radiator on. I'm pretty sure there's a 4-core radiator. It's longer than the one I had in it, so I have to get some different upper mounts. I need to fix this other mount is just off, just the slightest. This is a reproduction radiator, but so I don't know if the radiator's off or that mount's just in the wrong spot. But I needed to get new rubbers for the bottom, and I need to move that mount out a little bit because the radiator is kind of hitting in the back, so it's not sitting down in there like it needs to. If you didn't know, these have little kind of U's where the radiators sit, but that side it's not sitting in. So I need to clean it. Obviously I need to pressure check it and paint it and stuff like that, but I wanted to see if all that fits up. But I think I'm just gonna slide those out. For one, it's really tilted back. I pulled my shroud out, and my shroud, I never used it. I just bought it at swap meet forever ago, but the other side, the tab is broke, so I'm gonna make a little support to kind of sandwich the plastic in there, and that way obviously I don't have to plastic weld it because I'm not really a fan of that. And I'll just make a support that runs bigger and then run rivets through and kind of sandwich that together. Your attachment pieces, you run screws into the top. So just kind of getting that mocked up a little bit just so I know it's not an issue. Obviously I need new radiator mounts and stuff like that. I'm kind of like procrastinating because I really don't want to buy the cab mount radiator setup because it's like $170, but I really should because these 4-wheel drives have a taller rear bushing, and I don't have one. So instead of making my own kind of setup, I probably should just buy the stock one and just throw it in and know that it works. Another thing I wanted to show you that I didn't really explain was I had cut this down. There was more space in there, but something you'll learn the more of these you do is if you fill up that whole space whenever you run your wiring, or if you ever ran a gas tank in the back, you'd have to run your line way out the side.